If you like storytime vibes, hit subscribe and let's dive in together.
I used to think silence was peace, that when two people stop arguing, it means they've finally learned how to understand each other. But silence can also be something else, the sound of two hearts slowly walking away from one another, pretending not to notice. That night, I realized the difference. It was the night the laughter stopped. My name is Daniel, and if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said I was happily married. Not perfectly, but comfortably. Claire and I had built a life that felt safe. Dinners at home, late night TV, weekend grocery trips that somehow always ended with ice cream. Familiarity had become our love language, but comfort is a dangerous thing. It numbs you. It hides the cracks until one day you wake up and realize you've been living in a museum of what used to be happiness. The first sign was her laughter, not the kind that fills a room, the kind that doesn't include you. She came home from her new job glowing in ways I hadn't seen in years. Every story had a name in it. Evan. Evan said this. Evan thinks that. Evan's hilarious. At first, I smiled. I wanted to be that easygoing husband who trusts his wife completely. I told myself it was just work talk, but deep down, something inside me winced every time she said his name. It wasn't jealousy, it was recognition. I used to be the one who made her eyes light up like that. Then came the distance, late meetings, missed dinners, the kind of fatigue that doesn't come from work, but from pretending everything's fine. I told myself to be patient, to give her space, but patience, when misplaced, becomes denial. And that night, when she asked me to come to dinner with her colleagues, with him, I said yes, even though everything in me whispered, don't go. I didn't know it yet, but I was walking straight into the moment that would quietly end my marriage. The restaurant was the kind of place people go to when they want to feel important. All dim lights and polished laughter, the clinking of glasses pretending to mean something. I remember thinking it smelled like burnt rosemary and expensive wine, the kind of scent that doesn't belong to people like us. We arrived late. Her colleagues were already there, glowing in the amber light like they belonged to another world, confident, loud, effortlessly charming. And there he was, Evan. He stood when we walked in, tall and deliberate, wearing that kind of smile men wear when they already know they've won something. Daniel, the man of the hour, he said, gripping my hand a little too long, a little too firm. It was the kind of handshake that wasn't a greeting. It was a quiet challenge. Claire laughed softly. Don't mind him, she said, her hand brushing his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I noticed she sat next to him, not beside me. It was such a small thing, but it told me everything. The conversation flowed like wine. Easy, careless, full of private jokes I didn't understand. I watched her come alive at that table, leaning forward when he spoke, her eyes bright, her voice lighter than I'd heard in months. She had become someone else. Or maybe she had simply stopped being the version she played at home. I smiled, nodded, even laughed in the right places. I told myself to act normal, but inside I felt like a guest at my own life, watching my wife flirt with someone she swore was just a friend. At one point, Evan lifted his glass and said, "You know, office romances are inevitable when you spend that much time together." The table erupted in laughter. And then Claire looked at me. She smirked, that teasing, half-drunk kind of smirk that doesn't belong to love, but to arrogance. "Don't worry, darling," she said, still laughing. "If I ever cheat, it'll be with someone worth it." The sound of her voice froze me. The laughter around us turned distant, distorted, like I was underwater. I looked at her and wondered when she had become a stranger wearing my wife's face. I didn't speak. I didn't throw the wine or storm out. I just folded my napkin, quietly, deliberately, and set it on the table. "Excuse me," I said. Her laughter faltered. "Daniel, where are you going?" "Home," I said evenly. "Enjoy your dinner." And I walked out. Not fast, not slow, just steady. The kind of steady that comes when your heart finally understands something your mind has been denying for too long. Outside, the night was cold and clean. I stood on the sidewalk, the sound of her laughter still echoing behind me, a ghost of what used to be. That was the moment I stopped loving the idea of us. The city looked different that night. Not louder, not brighter, just emptier. It was as if every streetlight, every passing car, was aware of what I just lost but refused to say anything. I sat behind the wheel for a long time before even starting the engine. The laughter from the restaurant still echoed in my head. Her voice, that playful, cruel lilt, looping over and over. If I ever cheat, it'll be with someone worth it. It was supposed to be a joke, but jokes are dangerous. They tell the truth people don't dare to say sober. When I finally started driving, the road stretched out in front of me like an escape route and a confession at once. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't want sound. I wanted the silence, the kind that forces you to listen to yourself. The thing about heartbreak is that it doesn't come like thunder. It doesn't crash down in one moment. It seeps, quiet, steady, into every corner of who you are. At the first red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face looked still, too still. Not the face of a man betrayed, but of someone who'd finally run out of excuses to keep pretending. I realized then that I wasn't angry. Not really. I was tired. Tired of waiting for her to come home and be present. Tired of laughing at conversations that didn't include me. Tired of hoping she'd look at me the way she looked at her phone when his name flashed across the screen. Love isn't supposed to feel like begging for attention. I passed the familiar streets, the coffee shop where we had our first date, the park where she once made me promise we'd grow old together. Every place whispered a memory I didn't want to remember. They weren't painful yet, just hollow. Somewhere between one red light and the next, I whispered to myself, she's not coming back. Not the same woman I married. Not the one who used to hold my hand just to feel the warmth. And the realization didn't break me. It freed me. By the time I reached home, I felt lighter. Like the weight I'd been carrying was never really mine to hold. I parked in the driveway, turned off the headlights, and just sat there. The house was dark, silent, waiting. Funny how a home can look exactly the same, yet feel like a stranger's place the moment love leaves it. I walked inside, took off my jacket, and sat on the couch. No tears, no anger, just the sound of the clock ticking, like it was counting down to the moment I would finally accept the truth. I wasn't going to fight for her anymore, because somewhere along the way, she'd stopped being mine, and I had stopped being hers. It was past midnight when I heard the door unlock. The sound was soft, familiar, but that night, it felt like an intrusion. Her heels clicked across the floor, slow and hesitant. I didn't move. I just sat there on the couch, in the dark, staring at nothing. Daniel? She called quietly. Her voice trembled a little, as if she wasn't sure which version of me she'd find, the angry husband or the silent one. She walked closer, the faint perfume she wore still clinging to her, the one I'd bought her last Christmas. You just left, she said softly, almost accusing. I turned my head towards her. My eyes had already adjusted to the darkness, but hers hadn't. She couldn't see my face, and maybe that made it easier to speak. You humiliated me, I said. My voice wasn't raised, but it was sharp enough to cut through the quiet. You turned our marriage into a joke in front of strangers, she sighed. That defensive, dismissive sound people make when they don't want to feel guilty. Oh, come on, Daniel. It was just a joke. You're overreacting. Overreacting. That word hung in the air like smoke. I looked at her, really looked. The woman standing before me wasn't cruel. She wasn't evil. She was just gone, lost in her own restlessness. I realized she wasn't laughing at me out of malice. She was laughing because somewhere along the way, our marriage had become something she couldn't feel anymore. And maybe I was guilty too, for mistaking routine for love, for assuming loyalty meant happiness. I'm not angry, I said finally. I'm just done pretending this is love. Her breath caught. Daniel, please, she whispered. You're tired. You'll feel differently in the morning. But I wouldn't, because once respect leaves a relationship, it doesn't come back. I stood, walked to the bedroom, and pulled out a suitcase. She followed me, tears starting to gather in her eyes. Where are you going? I don't know yet, I said honestly, zipping the bag. Just away. Please don't do this, she said, her voice cracking. We can fix it. I shook my head. We can't fix something you don't think is broken. She didn't answer. She just stood there, in the doorway, crying quietly, her mascara tracing black rivers down her cheeks. For a moment, I wanted to reach out, to wipe her tears, to comfort her like I used to, but I didn't. Because that man, the one who used to fight for us, didn't exist anymore. I took one last look at her, not the woman she was that night, but the woman she used to be, the one I fell in love with, who once believed forever meant something. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, I said softly. Then I left. The door clicked shut behind me, not with anger, but with finality. Sometimes closure isn't loud. It's just quiet acceptance. The motel room smelled of bleach and loneliness. The carpet was thin, the air stale, the hum of the old air conditioner filling the silence that used to be my home. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, feeling everything. It wasn't anger that trembled through me, it was release. The kind of trembling your body makes when it realizes the war is finally over. I hadn't slept alone in years. The bed creaked as I leaned back, and for the first time, I didn't feel the ache of missing her. Just space. Quiet, clean, forgiving space. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and 10 missed calls, 16 unread messages. Her name glowed in the dark like a ghost refusing to rest. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't sound like a lie. I lay there, watching the faint red-blue flicker of the vacancy sign outside dance across the ceiling. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vacancy? That's what I had been feeling for months, hollowed out, but pretending I wasn't. Funny thing is, emptiness isn't always tragic. Sometimes it's just a room waiting to be filled again, with something better, something honest. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I whispered into the dark, I forgive you. Not for her sake, she'd never hear it, but for mine, because forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about letting yourself walk out without bitterness in your hands. The night passed quietly, and then came the morning. When I opened my eyes, sunlight had slipped through the blinds, stretching across the floor like a gentle invitation. I sat up, slowly, breathing in the stillness. The world outside hadn't changed. Cars moved, people hurried, life went on. But inside me, something had shifted. My heart no longer raced when I thought of her. The pain had stopped echoing. What was left was just calm. I looked around the small, colorless room. The sheets were messy, the mirror cracked, the air still smelled faintly of detergent, but somehow it was the cleanest place I'd been in years. My phone blinked again. A new message. Please, just talk to me. I typed a few words, then deleted them. There was nothing left that needed to be explained. Sometimes silence is the kindest goodbye you can give. I packed my bag, zipped it up, and stood for a moment by the door. No ceremony, no dramatic farewell, just a quiet acknowledgement. This was the moment I stopped looking backward. Outside, the morning light was soft, almost tender. I walked to my car, feeling lighter than I had in months. Driving through the city, everything looked familiar but distant, like memories viewed through glass. I passed the restaurant again, the one where it all fractured. Through the window, a young couple laughed, hands brushing across the table, And instead of pain, I felt something close to gratitude. We had our time, Claire and I. 7 years of shared mornings and small miracles. It wasn't wasted, it just ended. People think closure comes in a conversation, a final talk, a clear reason, but it doesn't. Closure happens quietly, when your heart decides it's done waiting for explanations. At a stoplight, I rolled down the window. The wind rushed in, cool and clean. I felt it touch my face like forgiveness, and I smiled. That was when I knew. This wasn't running away. It was returning. To myself, to peace, to the man I used to be before love became survival. I whispered her name one last time, not with longing, not with regret, just with peace. And then, as sunlight spilled over the road ahead, I drove on, not away from her, but toward me. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to leave. Quietly, gently, completely.